Hello. Today I'd like to talk about sort of a branching narrative and whether that was a good idea or a bad idea. So, again, our game was criticized for being too short. Again, to play through it to the end is an hour and a half to 2 hours, and then probably to explore all the branching levels, that's another 45 minutes to an hour. So we're looking at 2 hours 15 minutes to 3 hours of content, hopefully more towards the 3 hours. Now, if you want to just unlock the branches, I mean, that's probably another 20-30 minutes. So again, 3.5 hours if you're using a walkthrough. I mean, sort of max, I guess maybe we could say 2 hours and 45 minutes minimum time to unlock the branches. And if you actually have to discover them, I mean, that could take you an hour or two. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting to see which branches people discover and sort of how that doesn't line up with what I had intended. I mean, because I created the Final Descent branch first, and that was sort of the ending that I thought people would go through. But the branching point in Insanity, everyone sort of makes the same choice the first time, which is sort of not what I had intended. And I mean, certainly I think I probably could have done things a little bit better in terms of the way I designed that, but unfortunately we didn't get the branches in until, towards the very end, and we were already crunching and rushing, and so I didn't really have time to maybe rethink how that branch point worked. I mean, I didn't come up with anything until recently that I feel like would have maybe been a good thing to work around that. So let's see. But I mean, the real question is, were the branches a mistake? Would it have been better to structure the entire game as one sort of big playthrough? And it's a difficult question to answer. I mean, essentially we would lose out on the gameplay of people finding the other branches, which again is maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour. So it would sort of make our playtime shorter. But a lot of people weren't interested in that, and I mean, one of the first sort of reviewers who got back to me, they were like, how do we see the branches? And so then I'm like, well, crapsicles. If reviewers aren't going to take the time to unlock the branches, then I better, let them know about the wonderful game guide that Jay Price wrote. And so I started emailing that out when I gave a review code. Because, again, I really want people to see all the branches, but then, if you have to essentially beg people to look at the branches and you get all this criticism, that the game's too short, it does really sort of make your question, make me question the decision to do branches. And I really liked what we did with Neverending Nightmares. I think it worked really well. And it was important to me to tell the story that I wanted to tell. Was it the right decision? I don't know. I mean, is it something that I want to do in the future? I don't know. I mean, if you would have asked me before Neverending Nightmares came out, I would have said, yeah, it's cool. It's a neat thing. I want to go forward with it. I think there's a lot of room to iterate on that and make it more interesting, and I also felt like it made your choices, your decisions sort of matter. But I mean, I guess the problem is that people didn't know they were making decisions, and fundamentally this was a problem on a few different levels. Firstly, my thought was that, we're going to do important choices. We're going to have, it'll be like Walking Dead style, where you're going to have to choose, crappy choice A or crappy choice B. But then I realized there's a couple problems with that. One is that sort of empowering. Making a choice, giving you the ability to make a choice, is exerting control on the nightmares, on the narrative, and that's not something I felt like really meshed with, disempowerment, the themes of the game. The other thing is that it's really hard to say this is a choice, seriously make this choice, without putting up a big sign that says you are making a choice. And I mean, even in things where there's like in Golden Axe, the Revenge of Death Adder, which I love to death. I have the arcade machine. It makes me so happy. It does not make my wife as happy because it's enormous. But, they essentially have junction points where you can go this way or that way. And there's little signs, and it's really clear that you're making one choice or the other. And then since it's an arcade game, they make you go back and do the other choice again later. Which is always kind of interesting, how arcade games, pad out their half an hour playtime or whatever. But that's sort of an interesting, that's sort of a very clear choice. But then the thing was, we tried to sort of kind of maybe do that in the forest where there's, junctions and you can choose the right path or the wrong path. But people didn't really see the difference between the paths or figure out that they could take another route through the paths. And I'm not really sure why that is. Certainly it's confusing. The forest is sort of like a maze, and it sort of loops back on itself, which was to try and avoid the problems of, like, I don't know. I remember playing one of the Monkey Islands. I think it was the first, 3D LucasArts one, not the Telltale one. And maybe I'm wrong, but there was one where you had, a boat, and you had, a compass or something, and you had to, go the right way and use the time, or it was the clock, I think. I don't know, it was very confusing, and even with a walkthrough, it wasn't even, clear what exactly was going on, and I just envisioned having this sort of sprawling forest maze where everything's a forest, so it all looks, very similar. Having people getting frustrated. I think in Home, I don't know if you played the sort of indie horror game, Home. I think I got stuck in the forest part. And that was sort of, annoying, so I was sort of worried that we would get people stuck. If we made it too sprawling or too much of a maze. So basically, it reconnects with a sort of main branch. But again, even that sort of, binary, well, not exactly binary, but the choices you're making on a path where you see a fork in the road, even that wasn't entirely clear. So I don't know. It's really hard to do branches, and it was really challenging from a content creation standpoint. I don't know, if that's something I'm willing to take on, along with all the other sort of new things that we would try to do in the next game. Again, I like it. I think it's a cool idea, and I think there's room to grow and innovate there. And honestly, I thought, and this is probably a false assumption on my part, but I thought that by doing it, I would make people feel like the game was more interactive. The game was, had more interaction. It had that sort of, control, that sort of different experience for you than other people, which maybe was not true because everyone found the first path, one path first, which, my original hope was like, okay, let's just create, one path, or let's create paths such that, they're all equal, and people will have different experiences if they play, and then if they play through, their friends will have different experiences. And then I thought, well, maybe it'll be easier if we sort of have the main path, which was supposed to be the Final Descent story arc, just because that had the most concrete story, and I thought that would be sort of the ending that people would, feel has the most closure, and I worried that people would not like the other endings, and that would be sort of our main path. But then it turns out that that's exactly not the main path. People don't choose to go that way. But then, I liked, from a story standpoint, I couldn't swap the branches, and then, I didn't want to hide one, the other branch, so it would be very difficult to find. So we sort of ended up with what we ended up with, which I'm not entirely happy with. But, the question is, if we didn't do this branching stuff, would that make my life easier? And from a pacing standpoint, it would be challenging to, again, do the build-up over a long period of time. But from a gameplay standpoint, it would be... it would simplify my life a bit. I don't know. So certainly I don't have any brilliant conclusions for this, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out in Neverending Nightmares. I don't think there's anything that I'm 100% satisfied with. But I think, there's definitely room, things we could have done better with respect to that, and I don't know if I'm willing to sort of take on that challenge, because it is a challenge. Certainly, with Neverending Nightmares, I wanted to, it was potentially my swan song as an indie developer, so I wanted to put every cool idea I had into one game, just because, I wanted to sort of leave my mark. I can't say for sure, but it seems like we'll probably be able to do another indie game, hopefully, fingers crossed. It would probably be contingent on another Kickstarter success, and it would probably have to be a bigger Kickstarter than our first, which is definitely a challenge, but hopefully, we've gotten enough fans for the first game such that we can, do a little more ambitious Kickstarter. But yeah, I don't know if that's a challenge I'm able to do, or if I should instead focus on the areas of the game where I know what to do and know how to improve them, or the really important areas of the game, making the it feel more interactive, I guess. Anyway, that's all I have to say on that for now. So thanks for watching.